Imagine this. What if fear no longer had a place within your mind? Not silenced for a moment, not pacified, reasoned with, or temporarily subdued, but dissolved, utterly gone, like mist under the rising sun. Can you feel that? Each day, not in hesitation, not in doubt, but in quiet knowing. Knowing a voice reminding you of limitation. No whisper suggesting you're not prepared, not worthy, not enough. Who would you become in that state? What doors would open because you knew they would? What dreams would rush to meet you because you met them with the flame of assumption? Fear is not the villain. Obedience to fear is. Fear is ancient, primal, a servant, not a master. It speaks, yes, but it only rules when you agree. And every time you let fear govern your decision, you hand over the power of your creative center in exchange for imagined safety. You halt, not because you're weak, but because you've accepted stillness as survival. But not today. Today, we remember. Fear is but a shadow, a story, a mask worn by doubt, pretending to be truth. And we don't chase it away with empty declarations, but within a revision, practice, and purpose. Today, you learn not to run from fear, but to transmute. You will learn to move, even while trembling. You will learn to act while fear still whispers, because you no longer hear it as truth. You build a mind so precise, so disciplined, that fear finds no room in which to reside. Take a breath. Step forward. Do not look back. This is the moment. You kill the fear not with violence, but with light. Let us be clear. Fear is not the enemy. It is instinct, programmed by time and repetition, designed for survival, not for creation. It was never meant to lead. Yet, so many let it. They let fear guide their choices and wonder why life becomes a cycle. Fear arises at the edge of the unknown, at the edge of potential. That is not weakness. It is an old pattern playing on repeat. But inaction is the true enemy. Not the fear you feel, but the pause that follows. Most wait to feel courageous before they act. But courage is never born of comfort. It is born from movement in spite of fear. The great ones, the mountain movers, the history makers, they feel fear too. But they act. That's all. The distinction. That's the edge. You need not be fearless. You must only stop worshipping fear as authority. Let it speak if it must. But do not hand it the wheel. And know this. The more you move through fear, the smaller it becomes. Every time you act, despite its voice, you affirm a deeper reality. Fear does not mean stop. Fear means this matters. Step up. Imagination, repeated, becomes belief. If you can rehearse catastrophe, you can rehearse triumph. You are not at war with reality. You are at war with false inner images. This battlefield is not outside, it is within. And the weapon is your inner word. You do not need to feel brave. You need to assume bravery and act from it. Fear tells you lies, and the most dangerous ones are about you. That you're not enough. That you're doomed to fail. But these are just thoughts, looping like old reels of film, familiar but never true. Break the loop. Rehearse victory. Dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Fear is not defeated by avoidance, but by exposure. To feel fear and still step into it. Speak the word. Launch the idea. Ask the question. Do it badly, but do it. And by the 100th time, it becomes natural. It becomes freedom. The fearless were not born that way. They began trembling. But they returned to the fire again and again until the fire no longer burned. It illuminated. Understand this. Fear never fully disappears. But you cease to mistake it for truth. You walk through it because beyond it lies the life you have imagined. You don't fight fear with emotion. You displace it with discipline. Discipline trains your mind to act not based on feeling, but based on purpose. Discipline is your anchor. your proof. It removes the debate. The mind cannot discern between what is imagined and what is remembered. So fill it with images that serve you. Affirm them until they are your identity. I act in spite of fear. I am calm. I expand. I lead. Do not merely think these things. Live them. Let your actions preach louder than your inner voice. Show your mind that you now command. Guard your inner speech as you would a treasure vault. Disrupt the lies. Install truth. And remember, fear knocks, but it only enters if you open the door. Ask yourself now, is fear a stop sign, or is it a signpost that you are near the threshold of transformation? What if the very thing you avoid is where your next life begins? Fear does not mean don't. Fear often means this is safe. The trembling hands, the racing heart, there's life announcing, you are at the edge. And let this be known, the fear never leaves. But the legends, the speakers, the builders, the dreamers, they walk forward anyway. So when fear appears, not say, I see you. Then step forward. This is how freedom arrives. Not with absence of fear, but with power over it. In the end, what do you want? A life remembered for safety, or for audacity. You don't become fearless by waiting. You become fearless by choosing. And in the choosing, you forge your path. Through repetition, through alignment, through discipline. This is the end of fear's dominion. Not because it vanishes, but because you no longer obey. From this moment forward, you walk in your new identity. The one who creates, the one who assumes the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and acts accordingly. Fear will visit again, but now you know the game. You know the illusion, and you are no longer afraid. There comes a moment in every life when the whisper grows louder than the world. A moment when the outer clamor dims, and you are left alone with yourself. Not the self the world sees, but the deeper self, the true self, the one who chooses. And in that sacred stillness, you must decide, will you live by memory or will you live by vision? Fear is a memory in motion. It is not the voice of truth. It is the echo of who you used to be, projected into who you might become. It is the remnant of old assumptions, still fighting to hold their place within you. But here's the secret Neville knew. You do not escape fear by force. You transcend it by identity. You don't silence fear with effort. You outgrow it by stepping into a higher state of being. Assume the state. That is the key. Not someday. Not when you feel worthy. Now. Because what you feel yourself to be, what you persist in assuming, that becomes your life. You see, the fearful self is not you. It is only a pattern, a habit of perception, a script you've read so many times, you've forgotten it was never authored by you. The world does not mirror your potential. It reflects your assumption. So, if you continue to assume fear has power, it will rise to prove you right. But if you step into a new self-concept, a version of you that moves anyway, that expects the good, that assumes the door opens, then the entire world will shift in response. This is not fantasy. This is law. The law of consciousness says, you become what you believe yourself to be. And here's the part most miss. Belief does not need permission. It only needs repetition. When you assume a new identity and dwell in it, feel from it, act from it, then life reorganizes itself to match that new self-image. Fear is not because it's removed, but because it is no longer relevant. You don't need to kill the old version of you. You simply need to stop choosing it. Who are you when fear no longer gets to speak first? What decisions flow from that version of you? How do they walk? How do they speak? How do they enter a room? Hold that image, not as a distant ideal, but as your current self-concept. Assume it now, and the world will begin to conform. This is not fake it until you make it. This is embody it until it reveals itself. The moment you assume the new state, the old self begins to wither. It cannot survive without your attention. You are not here to manage fear. You are here to create from truth. And the truth is this: you are the only operant power in your world. You are the projector, not the projection. You are the root, not the branch. Your inner world is the cause. Everything else is effect. So, train the cause. Choose your assumptions like a gardener choosing seeds. If you do not prune the old thoughts, they grow wild. But with focus, with stillness, with discipline of attention, the entire garden changes. The fearful mind says, "What if it goes wrong?" The assumed self replies, "What if it goes right, and I'm ready for it?" The fearful mind asks, "Who am I to ask for more?" The awakened self answers, "Who am I to keep playing small?" You see, fear lives in the gap between your old identity and your true identity. It only exists where you have not yet decided. So decide. Neville would say, live in the backyard, end. Not someday, not hopefully. Live in the assumption that you already are who you desire to be, and then watch the bridge of incidents unfold. You don't chase courage. You create it internally by making a new self familiar. The subconscious mind accepts what is impressed upon it with feeling and repetition. So feed it the image of success, not survival. Feed it the feeling of boldness, not avoidance. Every time you act from this new identity, even in a small way, you impress the truth upon the inner man. And with enough repetition, the old fearful self dissolves like smoke. You forget what it felt like to hesitate, because that version no longer exists in your imagination. Let me remind you of this. Imagination is God. It is the creative power of the universe, clothed in your consciousness. What you accept inwardly becomes fact outwardly. So don't just visualize a fearless life. Assume you live one. Feel the version of yourself who already walked through the fire, and realize it was never real fire at all, just illusion, just suggestion, just thought. Now, test yourself, not by chasing dragons, but by simple assumption. Next time fear rises, pause and ask, which self am I listening to? Then return to the state, not with force, but with inner vision. Close your eyes. Imagine a version of you who doesn't hesitate. Feel what they feel. Speak as they would speak. Act as they would act. Then open your eyes and walk in that assumption. Not because you waited. Not because the world confirmed it. But because you chose. And choice is creative. So this is your work, not to fight the old, but to persist in the new. Each day, return to the state. Morning, night, in quiet moments. Dwell there. And what was once unfamiliar becomes your dwelling place. And what was once fear becomes fuel. You are not a victim of fear. You are a creator who forgot your power. But now you remember. You remember who you are, and you no longer need permission to walk in your power. This is the new command. I am already the one I've been waiting for. There is a sacred truth most overlook. Your routine is prophecy. Not the grand declarations, not the once-a-year decision made on a high of motivation, but the quiet, daily movements of your being. These are the rituals through which reality is shaped. It is not your fear that defines you. It is the structure you return to, day after day, that determines who you become. And this, more than any passing thought or burst of inspiration, is how the new identity is born. You see, a man does not become confident by accident. A woman does not awaken her power by hoping. They shape it, brick by brick, breath by breath, choice by choice, until the old self no longer fits, and the new one is the only one they recognize. Your habits are spells, and most people cast them unconsciously. They rehearse limitation. They repeat patterns of delay, of self-betrayal, of avoidance, and then wonder why their inner world continues to birth the same outer landscape. But you are different now. You are awake. And awakening demands practice. The question isn't whether fear exists. The question is, have you built a life where fear cannot thrive? Just as mold requires darkness and damp to grow, fear needs disorder, stagnation, and inconsistency. It feasts on neglect, neglect of your purpose, your thoughts, your self-talk. So, if you wish to banish fear, not as an emotion, but as a dominant force in your world, then you must re-engineer your life until there is no space left for it to hide. Start with your mornings. Your first moments are sacred. They are the gatekeepers of your state. Most wake up and step into the vibration of chaos, scrolling, reacting, chasing. But what if your first act was to remember who you are? Before your feet touch the floor, assume the state. Not the state of who you were yesterday. The state of your ideal self. Feel it in your body. I am calm. I am clear. I am certain. Hold it, even for 30 seconds. That is not a small thing. That is creation. Then move your body. Not for vanity or guilt, but because movement tells the subconscious, we are alive, we are active, we are not frozen. Fear thrives in stillness. Momentum is its undoing. Stretch, doing that. Breathe. Walk. Run. Command your nervous system to rise with you. Then speak. Not to the world, but to yourself. Words are tools of construction or destruction. And most walk around building their prison with inner monologues they never question. I can't do this. I'll probably fail. I'm just not that kind of person. And with those words, the subconscious obeys. Understood. Stay small. But now, you reprogram. Now I'm not with hollow mantras, but with assumed identity. Say it. I move with certainty. I rise even when doubt whispers. I don't ask fear for permission anymore. Say it as the you who already knows it's true. Because repetition is the great sculptor of belief. And belief always precedes manifestation. This is not about getting hype. This is about building scaffolding for the life that is waiting for you. Then, before the day begins to pull you, decide what you will not negotiate with today. This is vital, because fear loves negotiation. You say you'll speak up, fear says, maybe tomorrow. You say you'll launch, fear says, not yet, you're not ready. You say you'll leave the comfort zone, fear offers you a chair and a blanket. You must pre-decide. Before fear even enters the room. Before the old voice pipes up, your new self has already cast the vote. This is who I am. This is what I do. There is nothing to debate. Your day now becomes a ritual of alignment. Each small action, each conversation, each boundary kept or broken is a vote for who you are becoming. And fear, if it does rise, will find it has no authority here. It may speak, but it does not rule. You eat with intention, not as punishment or reward, but as fuel for clarity. You walk upright, not because you feel powerful, but because you are practicing the posture of the one who is. And in the moments where resistance creeps in, and it will, you don't collapse into analysis. You move, because you've learned. Hesitation feeds fear, but movement dissolves it. And here's the part no one tells you. You don't need to believe in your power every second. You only need to act like you do long enough for the mind to catch up. Action is a more faithful servant than emotion. You show up. You execute. You follow through. Not because fear is gone, but because you've trained yourself to act anyway. This is what separates those who imagine from those who manifest. At night, you do not collapse into entertainment or numbing. You reflect. You ask, where did I shrink today? Where did I expand? Who did I choose to be? You forgive yourself where needed. You celebrate the wins, no matter how small. You revise the moments that fell short, imagining a new outcome, impressing it upon the mind as if it already happened. Why? Because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and revised. It only knows what you feed it. This is how you move from concept to embodiment, from ideas to identity, not through bursts of motivation, but through rituals of remembrance. And slowly, something strange begins to happen. You no longer feel like a person trying to change. You feel like someone who has already changed. The fear that once loomed so large becomes background noise, a flicker, a shadow, a visitor, not a voice of God. Because now you've chosen your God. And it is not fear. It is vision. It is the assumed truth of who you are, rehearsed daily, lived boldly, refined in silence. And when you slip, and you will, you do not spiral. You return, I did in vain, to the breath, to the state, to the script you chose to live by. This is the path, not dramatic, not glamorous, but inevitable. Fear cannot survive a life lived on purpose, and that is what you are building now. One morning, one thought, one breath, one act of faith at a time. There is one sacred law at the root of transformation. What you persist in being, you become. Not sometimes, not if the world agrees. Always. The error most make is assuming their transformation is validated by the world. They wait for applause. They wait for ease. They wait for confirmation from the very conditions they were meant to transcend. But the world is not your source. It is your echo. And the echo always arrives after the voice. So let me remind you, you are not here to see the shift first. You are here to become the shift, until the seen catches up with the unseen. You are not performing for the world. You are reconditioning your own consciousness. Fear's last trick is to convince you that no change has occurred unless the world kneels in recognition. But all lasting change is invisible at first. A seed does not demand applause while it roots itself beneath the surface. It simply grows in silence until, one day, the surface splits open, and the world is forced to recognize what was happening all along. So don't be deceived. If you've chosen the new self, and the outer world hasn't bowed yet, stay your course. Do not break your posture. Do not return to begging. Your faith is not fragile unless you treat it that way. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up the next day to check if it's working. You persist, because this is not about convincing others. This is about convincing your subconscious. And the subconscious is not moved by dramatic declaration. It is moved by consistency. This is the divine repetition, the daily return to the state you have chosen, whether the world reflects it or not. This is the difference between playing with imagination and wielding it. And here is where many stop short. They assume once is enough. Once I visualized. Once I affirmed. Once I stood tall. But transformation is not built on moments. It is built on momentum. The new self must become your new default. It must be practiced until it is as familiar to you as breathing. You do not walk in it until it's hard. You walk in it until it's natural. When you assume a state, you are not pretending. You are returning again and again to a truth deeper than the fact. This is the sacred discipline, to hold the assumption even when fear knocks, to return to the vision even when doubt whispers, to speak the word even when the world is still quiet. You must remind yourself, you are not doing this for results. You are doing this because the results are inevitable once the assumption becomes stable. There is no magic in one grand act of bravery. There is power in 1,000 small choices to remain the version of yourself who already knows, I am it. I have it. I live from it. Not chasing it. Not waiting for it. Living from it. This is the spiritual maturity if you are taught that your inner environment is your real home, and all else is projection. So the real work is not in fighting fear. It is in returning to the state of being where fear has no place. If you feel off, if you feel doubtful, if you feel shaky, return. Close your eyes. Breathe. Speak from the identity that already holds the end result. Of course I feel this way. I already am it. Of course the door opens. I walk through it daily. Of course I rise. That is what I do. And stay there long enough for your nervous system to recognize that this is not just a script. It is your home frequency now. You are not trying to escape fear. You are becoming someone fear cannot reach. And yes, there will be days you forget. There will be moments when the old voice returns. That is not failure. That is the reminder. Return again. Every return weakens the hold of the old self. Every repetition strengthens the new. This is not punishment. This is mastery. And mastery requires devotion, not to perfection, but to presence. 1,000 small yes moments. 1,000 steps away from fear and toward embodiment. Ask yourself this: what does the version of me who fears nothing return to when shaken? What rituals do they hold sacred? Hold to those now. Not because it's glamorous, because it's effective. Let others look for motivation. You return to alignment. Let others wait to feel ready. You act from decision. Let others debate what's possible. You dwell in done. You walk through your day as the one who already crossed the threshold. And this is where life begins to bend, not because you forced it, but because you held to the vibration long enough for the illusion to crack. Fear cannot survive a disciplined imagination. It can only haunt the untrained mind. So train yours, not with intensity, but with intention. You do not need to wrestle every doubt to the ground. You need only refuse to water it. Feed the new self instead. Wake up and remember. Speak the truth aloud. Move as though it's already finished, because in consciousness, it is. And when the world seems to lag behind, do not curse it. Bless it for showing you where your faith is still shallow. Then go deeper, because every delay, every detour, every whisper of fear is an invitation to return again. Not to motivation, to identity. This is the life of the fearless, not without emotion, not without setbacks, but with an unshakable center that cannot be moved by appearance. The center you build by choice, by assumption, and only by repetition. You are not becoming powerful. You are remembering that you always were. So return again to the breath, to the silence, to the vision, to the self that already knows, and let the world rearrange around your stability. Because it always does. There is a point in your journey where the fight ends, not because the world becomes soft, but because you no longer need to wrestle with. The real war was never out there. The battleground has always been within, between the voice you inherited and the voice you were born to speak. If fear still rules, it is not because it is stronger. It is because you have not yet fully taken authorship of your own inner world. And so the final frontier is not more information, more motivation, more intensity. The final frontier is governance, not of others, not of circumstances, but of state. Because every experience in your life begins with a state. Every decision, every outcome, every encounter with the world is shaped by the atmosphere of your consciousness in the moment you step into it. This is what Neville meant when he said, to be transformed, the whole basis of your thought must change. You must become, not merely inspired, but installed in a new pattern of identity. So ask yourself now, not just who you wish to be in public or on paper, but what internal conditions have I normalized? What thoughts are allowed to live here, unchallenged? What feelings are permitted to dictate my behavior? If fear still takes the seat of command, it is not because you are weak. It is because the architecture of your inner world is still default, still automatic, still unclaimed. But that can change instantly when you stop asking life to change first. This is about designing from the inside out. Most people decorate the shell. You're here to rewire the foundation, because until the internal structure changes, you are merely negotiating with fear. You might win a moment, a burst of courage, a single act of boldness. But without conscious design, fear will return, and it will reclaim any space you left unsupervised. So you must occupy the throne with presence, with principle, with a new standard of inner behavior. This is not about never feeling doubt. It's about creating an environment within yourself where doubt is recognized as a visitor, not a resident. And how do you build that? One rule at a time, one conscious standard at a time, one energetic law you install in your own mind and refuse to break. Let me give you examples, not as advice, but as frameworks. Nothing enters my mind unexamined. This is not paranoia. It is protection. You are the gatekeeper of your reality. If a thought of fear, shame, lack, or powerlessness arises, you do not entertain it like a guest. You pause. You examine. You ask, who sent you? Who do you serve? And do you belong in my world? And if the answer is no, you replace it immediately. Not with hope, but with truth. I do not argue with fear. I override it. Fear will always try to negotiate. It does not beg you to stop. It makes you justify stopping yourself. It tries to sound like reason, like realism, like prudence. But you now understand. Fear does not deserve your debate. It deserves your replacement. When it speaks, you don't analyze. You respond from the identity you've installed. I am the one who moves. I am the one who acts. I am the one who does not wait for the perfect feeling I created. My energy is not reaction. It is regulation. You are no longer ruled by conditions. You set the tone. You decide the climate. If chaos swirls around you, you remain still, not because you are detached, but because you are anchored. That's real power. When others respond to the storm, you remember, the storm does not decide who I am. I decide who I am inside the storm. You are not here to live on emotional autopilot. You are here to curate your thoughts and refine your inner speech until your whole being sings in harmony with the life you say you want. Do not let hope be your strategy. Let your standard be your strategy. Let your internal assumptions be so finely tuned, so precisely chosen, that fear simply finds no open seat in your awareness. This is not denial. This is discipline. Because true fearlessness is not loud. It is quiet. It is the stillness of knowing, I am not available for that anymore. You see, once you've truly decided who you are, the energy of negotiation dies. You don't revisit old doubts. You don't ask the world for permission. You don't pull your emotions before moving. You simply move, because the blueprint is already written. You are no longer designing as you go. You are living from the design. This is what Neville meant when he said, persist in the assumption that you are already what you want to be. Persist. Not once. Not until you get tired. Until the old walls of hesitation fall away and the only thing left is truth. You were never supposed to fight fear with force. You were supposed to remove its oxygen through repetition, through consciousness, through ownership of owner. Your inner world. Let others live by reaction. You live by principle. Let others wonder what happens next. You decide, and let the world rearrange in obedience to your decision. That's the real secret. Fear doesn't need to be defeated. It needs to be replaced with clarity, with repetition, with identity so firm it becomes your atmosphere. And here's the final truth. You don't need a perfect mind. You just need to keep choosing your center faster than fear can reclaim it. That's the practice. That's the work. That's the way. Return again, not to trying, but to knowing, to being, to the silent command that says, "This is who I am now, and I do not move." There comes a point on your path when you no longer ask, "What should I do?" but instead, "Who decides in me?" And that is where fear begins to die, not by confrontation, but by irrelevance. You see, fear was never the problem. The problem was that fear got to cast a vote in your choices, in your voice, in your posture, your message, your pace. Fear stood beside you in the voting booth and whispered, "Not yet, not you, not now. But hear this now, and let it ring like a bell inside your being. That vote is no longer valid. The committee has been dissolved. Only the vision remains. This is the pivot, the turning point from a life of reaction to a life of authorship. You no longer wait to feel bold. You no longer poll the past for permission. You no longer ask fear what it thinks of your next step. You have one reference point now, the vision. And let's be clear, vision is not fantasy. It is not imagination as escape. It is imagination as instruction. It speaks in clarity. It moves with precision. It does not ask whether you're good enough. It assumes you are already chosen, already charged with the task. And so your only question becomes, will I live from it, or will I delay again? Because fear only lives in delay. It hides in the pause between what you saw and what you did. It crawls in during the gap between revelation and execution. And the longer you wait, the more real fear seems. But here is the sacred principle. The faster you move with the vision, the less fear has time to speak. This isn't recklessness. It's rhythm. It's spiritual speed. The decision to collapse the space between inspiration and action until they become one motion. Because fear thrives on hesitation, but dies in devotion. That's your edge now. You no longer wait for approval. You act from assignment. You no longer consider every voice in the room. You listen to the one within that speaks with fire and stillness. The voice that says, "This is yours. This is yours. This is now. Go." Let others delay for consensus. You are no longer a democracy. You are a kingdom, and the vision is your king. This is what it means to lead your life from the inside out. It means when the old patterns return, when fear stands up as it always will, you no longer flinch. You no longer sit it down at the table to negotiate terms. You smile, thank it for its service, and move forward anyway. Because you understand now, fear's opinion is irrelevant when the mission is clear. You were not sent here to fit in. You were sent here to fulfill something. And the clearer that becomes, the quieter fear gets. Not because it's gone, but because it's outvoted. You have given authority to the vision. And what you give authority to shapes your work. That's the real secret. Fear was never the architect. You were. Every time you hesitated, doubted, diminished yourself, it wasn't fear forcing your hand. It was you forgetting who the builder was. Now you remember. Now you return. And in this return, a new rhythm begins. You no longer start your day asking, "What should I do?" You begin with, "What does the vision require today?" That's your compass. That's your code. And here's the truth no one tells you. Once you start living from the vision, your life will get louder before it gets light. Why? Because all that is misaligned will surface. Old fears, old patterns, old loyalties to comfort. They will rise not to stop you, but to be seen and released. Don't mistake that resistance for a wrong turn. It's a sign you've stepped into power. The noise is not a warning. It's an echo. It's the remnants of the old world shaking loose because your feet have landed in the new one. And when that happens, when the trembling comes, do not pause. Do not regress. Do not consult the old counsel of delay. Just ask yourself, what does the vision demand of me in this moment? Then do that fully, without hesitation, because that's how legacies are built. Not through perfect clarity, not through fearlessness, but through unyielding obedience to the vision. This is your assignment now, to stop measuring progress by comfort, to stop asking fear for feedback, to stop asking the mirror if you're worthy. Instead, you measure by movement, you measure by alignment, you measure by the degree to which your actions match the blueprint you've already seen inside yourself. This is how you build a reality immune to fear. You live so deeply from the new identity that fear no longer recognizes your address. It may not. It may circle, but it finds no entry point, because you no longer open the door. You no longer answer to that name. You are no longer the one who delays. You are no longer the one who hesitates. You're no longer the one who asks, "Am I ready?" You are the one who moves anyway. And that's what makes you powerful. Not because you feel brave, but because you no longer grant your fear any power of decision. Only the vision votes now. It votes through your habits, through your speech, through your posture and your pace, through the people you align with, through the things you no longer tolerate. And that consistency, that fierce loyalty to your inner truth, becomes your new safety. Because there is no security in comfort, only in congruence. And when you are congruent with the life you were designed to live, fear becomes irrelevant. Not gone, just unimportant. So, let it speak. Let it rise. Let it do what it does. But you move forward. You build. You speak. You lead. Not because fear left, but because you stopped inviting it in. You have a vision now. And that vision is not waiting. It is alive. It is hungry. It is calling. Answer it. Only the vision votes now. And it has already said go.